what I'm going to be doing here is just basically installing Ubuntu XFCE into Windows Hyper-V. So this is just basically a basic Windows 10 installation. And so, well, this is the enterprise evaluation, but this is what you get the same as if you were running a normal Windows 10. So basically, to start off, what we do first is get hold of the ISO for the get hold of the ISO for the Ubuntu XFCE, and we find that at xubuntu.org. So if you just go to the download for the 2004 TLS, and so you just want this. So you just go to whichever is the nearest mirror to you, just so the download is quicker, and then just basically download the AMD 64 ISO. Okay, so that's finished downloading. So basically now all we have to do is get the Hyper-V set up. So if you've never set it up before, what you basically have to do is you have to do it in the control panel in the Windows features. So you go to control panel, and it's programs and features. Then if you go turn on Windows features, or on and off, and then where it's got the Hyper-V, just basically select all of it, and not sure why there's got a square blocking it there. It's a bit strange. Well, there's obviously some reason for that. So then just click OK, and it will install the components. So then just restart. And of course, to run Hyper-V, you have to make sure you got a chip that supports it, but most of them do. It's only some like older ones that don't, because of late Intel's been getting a bit more desperate, so they're actually including some features they didn't include in old chips in newer ones. I don't think you normally get the 2 restarts, but there was an update that was pending, so I think you just decided to install that update. Yeah, this isn't to do with Hyper. Yeah, it's not. All right. Okay, so now that it's installed, if you just go to the start square and just type Hyper, and so you just want the Hyper-V manager. I mean, you can use the quick create, but I find it's easier. Yeah, so first you got to connect to the service, and so basically, easiest thing. I mean, you can go quick create, but I find it's easy. Sometimes you have to go to the, you have to go to this wizard anyway. let's just use this is more just for if you, in case you're using old software. It's easy just to do, yeah, just go with generation 1, because as long as it's 64-bit you're okay. This is only for because EFI can actually make things more annoying. So let's give it the amount of memory. And actually, yeah, I forgot about it. So it's got default switch, but that doesn't, if you want to connect to the internet, I don't think that works as well as you think. Right, so you just create a virtual disk for it, and then now you just do an install operating system from CD-ROM, but basically just choose an image file, and it's still giving you an option from floppy disk. I don't know why they do that. So no, Windows can't fit on floppy disks anymore. So just go to where you downloaded that ISO. And that's it. Now, like I said, before you do that, notice it said the default switch, and one thing you might find is that I think the default switch doesn't, do you want to create that? Yeah, see, it's an internal network, so that's why you don't want to use it. So that's why you have to create a new one and basically make sure it's external. Because yeah, you might think doing it as internals, it keeps it secure. Problem is you can't connect to the internet, so you won't be able to do any updates or download stuff like the applications. So just give it a name. And make sure it's external network and it's attached to your to whatever your network device is called. It could be wireless or just your internal. Yeah, or an internal sort of Ethernet card. Yeah, that's fine. Right, so basically now we've got a switch for that actually connects to the internet. So just make sure we change the settings. So if we go to the network adapter and just change it to the one we just created, whatever name you called it. You don't need any of these. So that's that. So now we should be ready to start it. Yeah, that's the only thing. You see, it's a P2X4. So that's the generation 1. Is like, I think this is the original hardware that was used for was it Virtual PC? I think it was called. Yeah, That's one thing that's annoying about the newer operating systems is they presume you've got a huge screen, and I've noticed that most of them, installers, seem to do that now. And they make it difficult to make it smaller. I mean, when you're running an installer, why do you need a huge screen? It doesn't make sense. But what you have to understand is some of these developers, especially some of these open source ones, some of them are a bit stubborn, and they will make a decision which will cause problems for some of the users, but they just don't care. Yeah, so it's easier just to make it full screen. As you can see, it's using remote desktop to connect to the virtual machine. Yeah, sometimes it can be slower. Yeah, it should just erase. It's a blank disk anyway. Okay, just choose your time zone. It's running a bit slow. Okay, so now that's just installing, so basically just wait for it to finish. It's probably the case that if I'd used like an older distro like 1604, because I've just realized that I think Ubuntu have reduced it to 3 years now, whereas it used to be 5 years. So I think Canonical, they must be losing a bit of money, because that's one thing about them, is that they have to make the profits. So to do that, they have to like be stingy on the users. Right, okay, so that's finished. So we just restart. Obviously it restarts the virtual machine and not the Windows. And you can see it's XFCE because of the little rat symbol on the right. And you can see everyone always uses a spinning something because they're all brainwashed by Apple. So once Apple had a spinning something, everyone else suddenly decided whatever they use must spin. And you notice sometimes they'll use the dots going across because they were brainwashed by Microsoft at one time to say, well, any progress indicator must be something going across or left and right, because that's what Microsoft did, or going to one direction. And so Apple uses a spinner, and everyone who's brainwashed, programmers who are brainwashed, I should say, decide it must be a spinner, as if to say there are no other kinds of animations you could use. Yeah, so I've had this happen. I noticed this seems to happen a lot with Ubuntu. Sometimes what will happen is the installer, I've had this happen in other versions where the installer can't finish, and you basically just have to stop it basically. So it's like Ubuntu, they do have problems programming installers, because I think, so I think they put too much effort into making the desktop look fancy, and not enough into actually it's been difficult. You can see how difficult it can be sometimes to Okay, that's one problem with Hyper-V sometimes, is you have to, it's like Microsoft haven't finished programming it properly yet. And that's one reason why I'd say to anyone, if you want to use proper virtualization, you better just do it on a Unix-based machine and just be done with it, but running virtualization on Windows is more for if you sort of desperately need it for some reason. Now, of course, what Microsoft will say is they'll have an excuse like, oh, you're running it in another virtual machine, so that's why it's having a problem. But the thing about it is I've run Proxmox on here, and I've had no problems with running any of the systems on it. So if Proxmox has no problem running in a virtual machine, then I think that if there's any kind of problem, then it must be Microsoft. So anyway, like I say, if you're gonna run Hyper-V, just make sure that you really need to do it. Because I'm just gonna put Windows out of its misery. So if you want to run it, so if you really need to run it on your Windows desktop machine, then go ahead and take the risk. But you are better off using a proper OS that is actually designed for running the virtual machine. For some reason it seems to be running. I don't know how it managed that. But notice it's giving me more options now, isn't that strange? I just want to see if yeah, so what happens if you use it for install? I think it detaches it automatically, or when you next time you start it up. So let's see what state it's in. Okay, so that's what happens if you reboot while the virtual machine's on. It stays running, and so it'll start it up automatically, which is convenient. So that's it. So this is the XFCE, and right, so that's it. So, and just to check what I was saying about when you connect it to you have to create like a virtual network in order so it can be on your proper network. Yeah, I'll just take their advice, because of course all the so they advise you to use the IP command and not ifconfig, but if you're an old timer, you'll be used to using ifconfig because it's just more convenient. It's less to remember. Right, so you can see it. So this is an address on my actual internal network. So it's 10.130. So if I or actually let me see, because I think Windows now comes with, I think it comes with Bash now. Let me see. Okay, maybe not. Oh, yeah, see, I think the newer versions of Windows, they actually come with SSH. I think you obviously you can't run it as a Windows application, so you just have to run it from the command prompt. So as you can see, the IP is 192.168.10.130. So you just have to put in your username. Okay, looks like it's not running. Right, yeah, okay. Oh, that's interesting. Normally it'd make you put your password in. Oh, because I'd already run sudo less than 5 minutes ago. Right, so I'm just installing because the reason for installing SSH is just so you can paste stuff into because if you try and do it in the virtual machine, I mean the clipboard works, but it might not work as well as you want to, whereas it's easier to paste commands into an actual sort of command or terminal window. Alright, so SSH is running now. I want to connect. and that's it. So we're in. So yeah, so basically, so if you've got a new enough version of Windows, you'll have an SSH command inside your Windows command shell, because Microsoft have finally caught up with, you know, sort of people from 20 years ago who always had SSH, but of course they instead had to use PuTTY with all its bugs. So of course finally Microsoft have put SSH in Windows, so now people no longer have to put up with sort of PuTTY's bugs anymore whenever they're trying to SSH to their servers. Right, so there you go. So basically you can connect to it either, or do development either from Windows and connect to it through SSH, or you can obviously do it from within the actual virtual machine itself. And I'm just going to check that the internet does work. Because it'd be a bit... Alright. Right, so there you go. So basically that shows that the internet is working. And so basically you can just use the Ubuntu. And now some people might say, why not install the WSL instead? Because obviously you could install that from the you can go to the store and install that. Yes, because you can actually install it as a application in Windows, the newer versions of Windows. But the thing about it is when you install it this way, there are certain features in the kernel that basically aren't supporting. So not everything's going to run, but even though it's a little bit faster, you'll be missing kernel features. But if you install it as a virtual machine, basically when you connect to it, you get the full support of the kernel. And so every program you'll try to run will work. And so basically you just choose whichever way you sort of prefer to get your sort of Ubuntu system running inside Windows 10. Alright, thanks for watching this far, and see you in the next video. Okay, bye.